What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Tom Schwab. Tom is the founder of Interview Valet. And what they do is they do customized packages for individuals to get featured on podcasts around the globe, helping them raise their presence and their business. And it's absolutely gangbusters. Let me tell you something. If most of you have followed me through social media and all these things, you understand that I don't take pitches. I get pitched countless amounts of times every single week, and I don't accept any of them. There's been maybe 3 total, other than if I'm pitched by Interview Valet. And here's why. Interview Valet understands the value of giving to their audience. There's a number of guests that have been on this show that I got from them. I've mentioned Interview Valet in those interviews, like Philip Stutz and Jonathan George, and so many incredible people have come from this company because Tom and his wife, Karen, perfectly orchestrate the great clients and guests and individuals who are willing to give as much as they possibly can without asking for too much. It's the perfect mix of them and me, and I love it. So in this interview, we actually talk about the power of podcasting. We talk about the future of podcasting, and we talk about how individuals can start to get their name out there while being featured on some of the top podcasts in the world. So if that's something you're interested in, this episode is absolutely for you. Now, before we get to the interview, if you guys didn't see my post on social or get my email, we did postpone Growth Now Movement Live 2020 due to COVID-19. We wanted to make sure everybody's safe, and we wanted to take care of this amazing community that we're building. We postponed it to September 25th and 26th, and we are still excited to say every single speaker is going to be there, and it is still going to be the life-changing event that it was before, except a little bit better. Here's why. We don't know what this virus is going to cause our country to do. We don't know how long we're going to be quarantined. We don't know how long businesses are going to be shut down, and we don't know the effects it's going to take on small businesses and our economy. But what I do know is when all of this is said and done and it is over with, we are going to have to come together as one and help each other grow and build and do all those things. And Growth Now Movement Live is the perfect place to do it. We were already that last year. Now it's even more powerful this year. I cannot wait to see you guys there. Head over to gnmlive.com. And as a matter of fact, it's a gift to you guys. If you buy a general admission ticket this week, I will actually bump you up to VIP for free. I cannot wait to see you guys there. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with my friend, Tom Schwab. Tom, welcome to the show, man.
Justin, I am thrilled to be here.
I am excited. This is 2 years in the making. We met probably 2 years ago around this, maybe a little bit longer, around this time. And we were out in San Diego and we had breakfast together unannounced. You walked in, you recognized me from the day before at the event. You're like, hey, can I sit with you? And I was like, yes, it was me, you, and Adam. And thus began a connection that is now, stemmed into you and your wife coming to my event last year and sponsoring this year. And obviously, I love connecting with people who understand the podcast space. And I will say there were few people that I've met that know it on the interviewee side as well as you do. And so I'm excited about the conversation. But why don't we start with who is Tom today? And then we'll break it down and figure out how you got there.
Well, to me, I'm a natural connector. That's what I love to do. That's what the business does. And that's where I get my most joy from. You go back from there. I'm an engineer by degree. I graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. So to all the taxpayers, thanks for paying for my education. And, my first job out of college was running nuclear power plants. And people say, that's amazing. And I'm like, no, the amazing part is that you can put systems and processes together to have 20-something-year-olds running power plants. And so that's one of the things that it taught me is that everything can be taught, it can be refined, it can be systematized. So as I went through my career in corporate, both on the operations side, the sales and marketing side, and even running my own businesses here, that's something that I've always focused on. Shouldn't be a magic trick every time. You shouldn't need superheroes. If somebody can't tell you how they did it, they probably are making it up as they go. So that's me, a connector, but trying to put systems behind it.
No, I love that. And so rarely do you see somebody who has the personality and then the engineering like systematizing kind of personality. Is that how you always have been, or is it something you had to learn one way or the other?
I think I'm probably more on the creative side than the engineering side. I love engineering as a thought process, as a discipline. But I quickly learned that, to sit in a cubicle and design things for the rest of my life was torture for me. Even now people are like, you followed all the rules in nuclear power? Because I'm not a big rule follower. As you become an entrepreneur, it's more like I'll make up the rules and then decide which ones I'm going to follow. So I think originally I was looking for that security. I grew up middle class in just outside the suburbs of Chicago. And it was always find a stable job, right? So a stable job was going in the Navy. And when I left that, my dad called me a fool. He's like, all you got to do is put another 15 years in and you can retire. And then when I left a corporate job to go straight commission sales, he called me a dang fool, or words to that effect. He's like, you can't do this. You're married. You've got a mortgage. You've got kids. But I'm like, no, I know I can do it. So from that standpoint, maybe a little bit of a risk taker, more than a color between the lines guy.
Yeah. And so it's funny, like when I hear what your dad said of you only have 15 years, you know how long 15 years is, especially in an entrepreneur's mind? Like that is mind blowing because my life changes from year to year drastically. Like I couldn't even imagine 15 years like stuck in the same job. So what was it about the draw of entrepreneurship that you're like, I'm taking that leap?
To me, I think it's the learning. And, it always sounds, well, I took the leap. I was also helped in taking the leap. So in 2008, I remember the Great Recession. The manufacturer that I worked for decided that they were going to cut out the distributors. They were going to cut out the middleman, which makes a whole lot of sense until you look in the mirror, Justin, and go, wow, I look like the middleman. Now, granted, they did right by me buying back the distributorship. But at that point, I had this decision that, okay, well, I could get a job, become a corporate employee. But I saw the people that were a decade ahead of me, and I'm like, I don't want that life. And with that, we had a small sideline business, and we were just doing it in Michigan as a regional player. And I thought, wow, we could really build this up. It was the most unsexy business you probably ever heard of. Direct-to-patient durable medical equipment. And we were basically renting those knee scooters. And at that time, you couldn't find them anywhere. But when we got them back, half of them came with thank you notes. And we're like, we're making a difference here. So Karen and I thought about it. We prayed about it. And it's like, there's got to be a way that we can help more people. And, started to learn inbound marketing, read a book by two smart guys out of MIT, Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah, that talked about using content to attract, engage, and delight people. And I'm like, this should work for e-commerce. And it did. We were HubSpot's first e-commerce case study. Beretti USA, the oldest company in the world, was their second case study. And really, we took that, built that business up from a regional player to a national leader, sold it off, and then used the same principles for podcast interview marketing. Now instead of writing guest blogs, you guest on somebody's podcast the same way.
Yeah, I love that. And so I will tell you this, and I don't know if you know this about me. I spent 5 years in the DME world, respiratory and DME, and that was my life for 5 years. I was a manager of a region, and it's definitely not sexy. There's nothing sexy about that business, although there is a great reward to hear back from people and say, you really helped me. And that's what I loved about it. And I think with anything, you find what it is you love, because not everything's perfect, right? and I see your clients, and obviously Jonathan George is one of your clients with Interview Valet, and that's how he got on my show, and that's how he's a part of my event now. And again, power of podcasting right there in itself, right? And so I see the same thing with what you did with the DME company that you're doing with Interview Valet, with the connections and the thank yous and the true giving to your clients is unmatched. So let's talk a little bit about why podcasting. Like, how did you, because you've been in the game longer than most, like, how did you even hear about this platform? What was it that drew you to it, and where did you see the dollar signs?
I started listening to podcasts probably 2010, back in the days when you had to plug it in, download, all the rest of that.
Yeah.
And it was probably 2014 that I was in a sabbatical phase. I had sold my one business and had some friends that I was in a mastermind with. Said, could you help me with the digital marketing? And I said, well, write some blogs, write some guest blogs. And one of the things that I saw was that it was a homework assignment for them. And even then, it wasn't working as well as it used to. Everything's got a shelf life. And it was really hard to tell them, hey, just write blogs for another year and maybe you'll get traction. And all of them had great stories to tell. So I hypothesized at that point, podcasts are starting to take off. And could you use the interviews almost like the same way we used guest blogging? So instead of, just putting something out, getting it seen by 3 people, go to an established audience, get that authority, the know, like, and trust. And originally we were seeing conversion rates of like 25 times better than blogs. And I was amazed. And as an engineer, I'm like, it's got to be the personality. It's got to be the niche. Started to test it and it really worked. So I didn't want to build an agency. So I wrote this cheesy PDF ebook and was giving that away. And then Dan Miller from 48 Days, The Work You Love, is like, you should put together a video course on this. And I put it together, but I never took it out of beta because, you can see from the back end, are people getting results with it? And most online courses people don't get results with. They don't even finish it. But the people that were honest with me said, you've given me the cookbook, you've given me the videos. I just want to be the guest, you do, let me be the guest, you do all the rest. So in 2015, we started to beta test it, worked so well that we took it out of beta in 2016. And now we've grown to a team of 16 based in US, Canada, and Europe now, and serving about 100 clients. It's amazing just the people that you get to introduce and interact, and exposure brings opportunity.
Yeah, no, and I love that, and that's actually I launched this podcast in 2016 as well, and so you look at that and you go, wow, like we're on the same trajectory. But I remember when I launched this show for the first probably year, I would say to people, yeah, I have a podcast, and they would go, what's a podcast? And so now we're in a world, I go, I have a podcast, and they go, oh, you too? Right. And so now it's really exploded over the last 3 years. Now, did you know this was going to happen back then? Or were you just like, look, there's a niche now, let me get in?
I really thought that after probably the first 2 years, I'm like, did I start too early? Because you were smart enough to say, I have a podcast. I do my full 30-second elevator pitch. And the response I got from most people was, what's a podcast? And so I think we had the first few years where we were too early, right? People didn't know what a podcast was. They didn't respect it. But I think it was great because we could get the systems down, the processes down, do all the testing. And really over the last probably year, it's just exploded. Everybody knows what a podcast is. They've got more respect with that. For example, I wrote a book in 2000, came out in early 2017. It's sold more in the last 6 months than it did in the first probably 2 years, because nobody knew what a podcast was.
That's amazing. That's amazing to write something and then see it blow up, a year and a half later, and that kind of shows you, like, first of all, consistency, sticking with it when it's not necessarily what you think it is. I mean, I look at my podcast, and for the first year and a half, it was doing nothing, but I kept showing up. And obviously it's blown up since then. The Inc. article helped a lot, but with that, it was really the consistency and showing up when nobody's there. And Gary Vee talks about that all the time. He talks about how he was on YouTube every single day with 3 people watching for a year before it really turned up. Now, when you look at being an entrepreneur and using this space, what has been the key to your growth as an organization? Has it been the popularity of podcasting, or are there other things and niches that you do?
I think it's really getting your message out there. More and more when people talk about, breaking through the noise, I have to laugh at that, right? I think sometimes it's the people that are selling us the megaphones that are telling us to break through the noise. The idea that I'm going to go onto Facebook and break through the noise is laughable. The other thing too is that I don't want to break through the noise. I want to get in on the conversation. So I think it's this idea that bigger is not better, better is better. So I don't need to talk to 1 billion people or scream to 1 billion people trying to break through the noise. Let me find my people and get introduced to them. And I think a lot of times the strategy doesn't change throughout time, right? So how did people build their businesses 50 years ago? Personal introductions. That's still the same way we're doing it. How do you get people to your conference? Well, I go to it. Karen goes to it. We tell people, this is awesome. You have to go next year. And so it's that personal referral. The only difference today is that we've got tools to do the personal referrals. So, if you're on a webinar, if you're on a podcast interview, it's still that one-to-one introduction, but it's done at mass. Sometimes I'll call podcast interviews digital stages, right? So if you invite me to an event, I go up on a physical stage. Yeah, I might be talking to 100 or 200 people. But you think about it from a podcast interview, you can talk to thousands or tens of thousands. There's no travel. There's no stage fright. And, if you, my kids call it the podcaster mullet. All you've got to do is look respectable from the waist up.
I love the podcaster mullet. That's amazing. I also don't look respectable from the waist up right now. I'm wearing a Phillies hat, by the way. Go Phils. But it's one of those things that I love this medium because what I've realized with hundreds of interviews that I've done, it's just real conversation. It provides an opportunity for people to show who they truly are. Because I've been on radio, I've been on television in certain clips, but it's always 3 to 5 minutes, 10 minutes at most, right? What is that? People aren't going to get to know me, my personality, but podcasting provides that long form medium that number one, people are listening to, but number two, for you to open up, to truly progress through your story, to do all those things. Now, one thing that all of your clients that I've had on my show do is they nail it. They give unconditionally. They know how to tell their story. They know how to do all these things. Now, is that something that you guys do at Interview Valet? Do you coach them on this? What's the process with that?
I think some of it is coaching. The other one is bringing on the right people. Our mission is to personally introduce inspiring thought leaders to millions of ideal customers they could serve for the betterment of all. So early on in the process, if we've got somebody that wants to use and abuse an audience, God love them. We don't want to promote them, right? They've got to be an inspiring thought leader. I'm really not interested in bringing out somebody that's got the newest course on how to blog. It's like, that was interesting maybe a dozen years ago. And it's just talking with them. If they can't have a conversation with us in the sales call, if they can't be interested in being interesting, they're probably not going to be a good podcast guest. And really, we're looking at 4 things when we first talk to them. And because we want all of our clients to have great results, and we looked after our first 100 clients, why some of them got good results and some of them got great results. And it really boiled down to 4 things, and they all multiply on themselves. So if one is weak, the entire result will be weak. The message. Are they interested in being interesting? Do they have stories to tell, not just a product to sell? The market is the second one. Do they know who they want to talk to? And do they have something they can help them with? The third one is the machine, right? If you go on a podcast interview, somebody will go back to your website. They will check you out on social media. And if your website looks like it was built in Y2K and your social media looks like you're in the witness protection plan, it's not going to convert. And then finally, it's the match. We focus on 3 verticals, not necessarily where our clients are, but where our clients' clients are. and that's business, faith and Christianity, and health, nutrition, and wellness. So, if somebody comes to us as a comedian and says, will this work for me? Yes, it might work for you, but we're not the agency for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm a big preacher, lack of a better word. I'm a big preacher of the idea, like, I'd rather turn clients away than disappoint these people just for a couple bucks, right? And that's kind of what you're saying. Is like, look, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work, and we're going to be honest with you. I've turned more clients away with what I do than I've brought on, right? Because look, if you're going to come in here and you want one result and not the other. So I own a podcast production and coaching company, as you know. And so people come to me and they're like, I want to launch a podcast. I'm going to have thousands of people listening when you do this thing. And I go, well, let's be realistic. And if they're not understanding the realistic concept, I'm going to look, I'm not going to be able to deliver what you want. Now, if it's somebody who wants to spread a positive message, somebody who wants to slowly grow a deep connection with their audience and all those things, then let's work together, right? And I'd rather work with those things because you're doing a disservice to people if you're just selling it for $1, if that makes sense. And that's what I love about what you're doing with Interview Valet, is because it is about a deeper connection. It is about growing things beyond what we know is the norm, right? Now, when you're looking as being a guest of a podcast, and we just talked about the 4 pillars of what's important, how do you then go in and deliver? Like, is there a science to it? Like, is there a one-stop shop to this is the perfect way? What's that look like?
Well, I would say you deliver from the very beginning. Gary Vee always talks about jab, 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 right hook. And I probably missed a few jabs in there. I always look at it as serve, 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 ask, right? So there's so many people that start with ask, hey, can I be on your podcast? That's a rude question. That's like propositioning somebody in a bar, and that's the first thing you say to them. Yeah. So with a podcaster, serve them, listen to the podcast, leave a rating and review, share the content. You asked me to be on the podcast. I've never asked to be on it, but if you serve, all of a sudden the host is asking you to be on the podcast. And then once you get on the show, we always tell our clients, your number one job on the show is to make the host look like a freaking genius for introducing you to their friends, right? If you do a good job, they will promote you more than you can ever promote yourself. So give value, be honest. Don't go to the talking points. Be real, add value, give things. If you keep doing that, people are going to be asking how they can work with you. The best tweet I've ever seen out there came from Rand Fishkin, and Rand started a company called Moz. He also wrote a book called Lost and Founder. Highly recommend it for anybody that's in the tech space or thinks that that is glorious there. But he said the best way to sell something today is not to sell anything, but to earn the respect, awareness, and trust of those who might buy. So if you do that on a podcast interview, people will be asking. The right people will be asking how they can work with you.
I love it. So obviously you're somebody who also practices what they preach, right? And understanding the idea of being a guest. What was the number you threw out at me? How many podcasts have you been on?
I'm up over 1,400 right now.
Is unbelievable. And I said to you, I think I've done a little over 100 or something like that. I don't even know. I haven't looked. I haven't counted. I get asked a lot and I just say yes. And then that's the end of it. I've never really tried to pitch or get on shows. But 1,400 podcasts over the course of 4 years, 5 years?
Back from 2014. So I guess we're more like 6 years now.
Yeah. Which is, the time is flying, man. It's now 2020. Let's remind ourselves here for a second. But, that's what I love about you, because you do practice what you preach and then you deliver for your clients. Now, as I see what you've been doing with Interview Valet over the last couple of years since I've been introduced to your brand, I just see it evolving and growing along with what's happening in podcasting. What do you see going forward with podcasting as far as, do you see it growing? Do you see it? You said everything has a shelf life. What is your concept and idea of the future of podcasting?
I think right now there's somebody listening to this from 2025 that laughs every time we say podcasting, right? Because I don't think we're even going to call it podcasting a decade from now. In 1920, it was called wireless telegraph. And by 1930, it was called radio. And I've asked my, youngest daughters, hey, what's the pod stand for in podcasting? They roll their eyes and say, I don't know, Dad, what's the pod stand for? because they don't know a world with an iPod. And so I think this idea of podcasting, it's really more content. It's a show. If somebody's listening to this on YouTube, is it a podcast? If somebody is listening to clips of this on social media, on a Facebook audiogram, is that a podcast? If there's a blind person that's reading the transcript, is that a podcast? I don't know. I think what we're going to see is that we live in such a great time now where we can produce the content in the way that's easiest for us and then repurpose it in the way that's easiest for other people. What I do think the power of podcasting, or the power of rich audio, is I think where we're going to go. There was a great book. I can't remember the title of it. Jacobson, I believe, was the gentleman's name. He's a futurist out of Stanford. And he believed the future was rich audio. Felt that video can be quickly dated, right? We watch Star Wars right now, the original one, and it's like, oh, we were impressed by this. Or I love the movie Wall Street, but my kids laugh every time, Michael Douglas comes out there with his cell phone that looks like a World War II walkie-talkie. All of a sudden, it just becomes comical. Whereas if audio, you can listen to it and you don't judge, is this person older than me, younger than me? Do they look like me? I can think my niece started to sell real estate, and she had to read all these different books and listen to different tapes. And she called me and she was so excited. Uncle Tom, have you ever heard of Zig Ziglar? I'm listening to this stuff. And she was so excited. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Zig is dead and that those recordings were probably made before she was born. To her, he was alive and teaching her. So I think there's something magic about audio that we don't see in other mediums.
I literally have chills right now, just how you described all of that. Number one, yes, I do believe that it's going to evolve as a name. I've thought that myself. I'm like, even now, as we say it, like, podcasting seems outdated in 2020, like just that name itself. But then you talk about how it doesn't matter who you are, which shape you take, how old, young, fat, thin, quote unquote, ugly, pretty, whatever. This is a medium for everybody. You can step up and you can do it. The joke, my joke is all the time, I have a face for podcasting, right? Or they used to say you have a face for radio and all these things. But it gives everybody the same opportunity to record something, put it out, and then live on in infamy, because it is forever. Like you said, people will be listening to this episode in 2025. There are still people that go back and listen to my first episodes, when I still had a co-host, and here we are 4 years later, and people are going back and listening. So that's not a joke. That's actually going to happen. Maybe consumed a little bit differently, but I'd love to see how that evolves. And so I love all of that. And what I also love about you, Tom, is you're somebody who is a true entrepreneur. You built the first business, sold it off, and now here you are building the second business, and it's growing exponentially year over year. My question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
To me, success is not a destination. It's a process. Early on, my dad died when he was 62. And I looked at it. He never got to, quote unquote, enjoy retirement. And I always looked at it and said, maybe I won't either. And a buddy of mine, we decided that when we retired from corporate America, that retirement for us was going to be doing fun things with interesting people and writing it all off as a business expense, right? Because if we retired and played golf, our wives would kill us. So this friend of mine, Brian, passed away unexpectedly. But when I turned 50, I decided I'm retired. I'm only going to do fun things with interesting people and write it all off as a business expense. So to me, that's success. Success is doing what you want every day. And like you said, it's not all fun, but this is the life you have chosen. And we live in a world where if you don't like it, change it. Yeah. The 3 things that I do every day is I start with the end in mind. So in the morning, I'll visualize what the day looks like, what the plan is. So that starts the day. the end of the day, I look back and I say, what did I accomplish? What do I have to celebrate today? What am I going to do tomorrow? If God gives me another day, what am I going to do with it? Mm. And so that's sort of the bookmarks, the beginning and the end. In the middle is just trying to be awed and in wonder of the times we get to live in. I say I've got two business coaches that are just phenomenal. One's a 3-year-old and the other one's a 5-year-old. They're my grandkids, right? They ask the right questions. They just look at the world in awe. And, there's a lot of problems in the world. There's a lot of problems in business. But come on, there is no better time to be alive. And we've got to keep reminding ourselves of that. We're talking over a video conference here. You're in Pennsylvania. I'm in Michigan. 20 years ago, this would have cost a fortune. Yeah. And now it's relatively free. We've got access to customers. A decade ago, my customers probably would have had to be within driving distance of me. Now, as long as you got an internet connection, you're a customer. So I think putting that in perspective of that awe. And, we all get down. I get down, but trying to take a step back and go, wow, this is amazing. These are amazing problems to have.
I love all that stuff. So as you guys know, Tom has the voice for podcasting. Like if you're not relaxed, just listening to this voice, you are wrong. And so the cool part is you've got some exciting things in the future for you. So what's next for you, your brand, Interview Valet? What's all the good stuff?
Well, to me, is just serving more in podcasting and seeing where it's going. I haven't publicly said this, so this is the first show I've talked about. You asked, and maybe you can see it come live at the Growth Now Movement Live. But I'd really like to launch Interview Valet Espanol because
really,
yes, and your face is just like. And as I've told people that, they're like, do you speak Spanish? No, I don't, but I'm working on it. And you know what? We've got a couple of team members that are bilingual. And one of the great promises to me with podcast interviews and podcasting is breaking down barriers and stuff like that. We've got the systems and processes set up that we could start going into the Spanish-speaking market. And I would love to do that because I think there's a lot of people that are crossovers, right, that could speak into both markets. I'd like to do that. Personally, for me, the team has grown to such a level that I don't have to do the day-to-day stuff. I've got a great team, and often what I need to do is get out of their way. They know what they're doing, and they do it with excellence. So this year, I'm really focused on being the CEO. And to me, that's Chief Evangelist Officer. And that's evangelizing the category of podcast interview marketing, evangelizing for our clients, evangelizing for our team, and evangelizing for podcasts. Every day I do a daily podcast discovery, which is just sort of a shout out to different shows that I like out there. So to me, that's fun.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously they are becoming abundant. You're never going to run out of another show to shout out, which is so very true. I remember actually when you shouted me out, I was like, that is such a phenomenal way to acknowledge people in the space, to say, hey, look, I see you, I hear you, I respect you. And so kudos to you for coming up with that, because it is a great tactic, but also true to who you are, to be able to connect and grow. So I love that. Now, obviously, the really neat part is you guys are involved with Growth Now Movement Live this year. You're going to be at the VIP party. So, guys, make sure you go check out Tom, say hello to him, learn more about Interview Valet and all the amazing things that they're doing while you're at Growth Now Movement Live. Do all that stuff. But if they're not at Growth Now Movement Live, how do they get more information from you? How do they sign up? How do they book a call? What's all the good stuff?
All right. So if you want to see behind the curtain, this is what works always best. Don't send people to 5 different places. Send them to one site on your website. So if you go to interviewvalet.com/growth now, you're going to see what a welcome page looks like. And that's the best practice from all of our testing. First thing that's going to show up is Justin's picture, right? Because that's a trust seal. He's your friend. Then it goes through. And then we've also found that it's best to give people 3 ways to connect: a small yes, a medium yes, and the heck yes. So we've got a podcast interview marketing assessment. It's about a dozen questions. It'll tell you whether or not you'll get success with this strategy, things that you can do to improve that. I'd mentioned the book. I sell a lot of them on Amazon, but I give a whole lot more away. If you'd like a copy of Podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business with the Targeted Interview Strategy, that'll be there at interviewvalet.com/growth now. And then finally, if you listen to this and said, wow, Tom understands my problem. He works with people like me, coaches, authors, speakers, brands, and you want to jump on a discovery call, I'll put my calendar link there too. So just go to interviewvalet.com/growth now. And I hope I get to see you in real life in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's one of our favorite meetings to go to, and we always look forward to it.
That means so much coming from you, because I know you go to a lot of events, and I just love that you and your wife came and truly enjoyed the process of being a part of it. And glad that you guys are coming back this year. So guys, make sure you go to interviewvalet.com/growth now to get all that information. Highly, highly recommend at least learning more from his book and obviously figuring out the whole podcasting space a little bit deeper as a guest. So Tom, as you know, this podcast is called the Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single interview with this one question. That is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
To me, the biggest moment of growth always came at the biggest moment of stress. So that at the Naval Academy, the boot camp, the plebe summer, so much stress, but so much growth. Nuclear power school, the same thing. So much stress, but so much knowledge and growth. As a new parent, all the rest of that. Even as an entrepreneur starting out, there's so much stress, but so much growth. So now sometimes when I look at, here's another big stressful point in my life, to look at it and say, welcome the stress, because you know that there's growth coming out of it.
Love it. Tom, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I love what you bring to the table. I love your energy, man. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in a week at PodFest. But then again, seeing you at Growth Now Movement Live, it's going to be amazing.
Justin, thank you. And I appreciate all you do.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.